on my 62nd birthday. I sat in my darkened sedan and watched my son raise a glass of champagne to his mother-in-law inside the warm glow of harbour and oak. He had sworn he was working an overtime shift at the hospital. I did not scream. I simply realized that 10 years of my sacrifices had purchased his betrayal. Tonight, I stop being his safety net and start becoming his consequence. My name is Eleanor Briggs. Today, I turned 62. I am an accounts receivable clerk at North River Dynamics, a job I have held for nearly 3 decades in the quiet town of Redwood Springs, Illinois. My life is a series of predictable routines, much like the spreadsheets I manage. I pay my bills on time. I drive a sedan that is 7 years old. I live alone in a house on Maple Street that feels too large for one person, but just right for the memories of a family that no longer exists in the way I wish it did. The morning began with the standard office pleasantries. There were polite emails from colleagues and a box of grocery store cupcakes in the break room. I ate a vanilla one with blue frosting, smiling at the appropriate moments. But my mind was elsewhere. I was waiting for Michael, my son, my only child. The sun around which my entire grey universe revolves. My phone finally rang just past noon. I stepped into the hallway to answer, my heart doing that foolish little leap it always does when I see his name. Mom, listen. I am so sorry, Michael said, his voice breathless and rushed. Background noise hummed behind him, the chaotic sound of a busy corridor. I can't make dinner tonight. The hospital is a zoo. We had 3 transfers come in at once. And, well, I have to stay to handle the admission paperwork. They can't run this place without me tonight. Michael works in hospital administration. He is not a doctor. He is not a nurse. He manages insurance claims and billing codes. Yet, to hear him speak, one would think he was holding a scalpel in a trauma bay. I gripped the phone a little tighter. The reservation was for 7. I had already laid out my good dress. Oh, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. That is all right, honey. Work is important. Don't worry about me. Are you sure? He asked, though he did not sound like he wanted me to say no. I feel terrible. I know I promised. I am 62. Michael, not 6. I lied. I have plenty of food here. You focus on your work. We can do it another time. Thanks. Mum, you're the best. Love you. The line went dead. I stared at the screen for a moment before sliding it back into my pocket. In my refrigerator at home, a small chocolate cake I had bought for myself sat in a white cardboard box. I suppose I would be eating it alone. At 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I clocked out and walked to my car. The Illinois sky was a bruised purple, threatening rain. I was merging onto the main avenue when my phone buzzed in the cup holder. It was Nora, a young girl from the marketing department who treats me with more affection than my own blood relatives often do. I waited until a red light to glance at the screen. The text was short. Are you at Harbour and Oak? I just saw Michael check in with a caption wishing someone a happy birthday. The light turned green. I did not move. Horns blared behind me, sharp and angry. I pressed the gas pedal and pulled into the nearest gas station lot, my hands trembling against the leather steering wheel. I opened the Facebook app. There it was. A story posted 4 minutes ago. The image was dim, lit by the warm, expensive glow of candlelight. In the foreground, a crystal glass of red wine. In the background, slightly out of focus but unmistakable, sat Sophie, my daughter-in-law. Next to her was Patricia Hale, Sophie's mother. She looked elegant in a pearl necklace I knew cost more than my first car. I looked at the location tag, Harbour and Oak. The air left the car. Harbour and Oak was the finest steakhouse in Redwood Springs. It was the specific restaurant Michael had promised to take me to this year. He had said, "Mom, this year I am going to show you what a real dining experience feels like." I sat there for 5 minutes. The engine idled. The heat was on. But I was freezing. I should have gone home. I should have eaten my grocery store cake and watched television until I fell asleep. Instead, I put the car in gear and turned left. Harbour and Oak was only 4 blocks away. I pulled into the crowded lot and found a spot in the back row, facing the massive front windows. I turned off the headlights. I turned off the engine. I sat in the dark, an invisible spectator to my own exclusion. Through the floor-to-ceiling glass, the restaurant was a theatre stage. And there they were, table 4, right near the centre. Michael was standing up. He looked handsome in the blue shirt I had ironed for him last week. He was holding a glass of champagne high in the air. He was smiling a genuine, wide smile that reached his eyes, the kind I had not seen directed at me in years. Sophie was laughing, clapping her hands. Then I saw Michael reach down and pick up a large, velvet-wrapped box. He handed it to Patricia. She feigned surprise, pressing her hands to her chest before accepting it. I watched my son's lips move. I did not need to hear the words to know what they were. Happy birthday. Patricia Hale was born in August. It was March. This was not a birthday dinner for her. This was a celebration of their life, a life where I was an obligation to be managed, and she was the matriarch to be honoured. He had cancelled on his mother on her actual birthday to treat his mother-in-law to a feast on a random Tuesday. I waited for the tears. I waited for the heartbreak that novels always describe, the shattering of the soul. But it did not come. Instead, a strange, heavy silence filled my chest. It felt like a heavy steel door slamming shut deep inside a vault. I watched them clink glasses. I watched Michael laugh at something Patricia said. I sat in my paid-off car, in my cheap work clothes, and I understood everything. Okay, I whispered to the empty car. Okay, if that is how it is. I did not start the car immediately. I just watched, memorizing the scene. I wanted to remember exactly how happy he looked while he thought I was sitting at home alone, sitting in the dark parking lot of Harbour and Oak. The silence of my car became a time machine. It dragged me back to a time before I was the invisible woman in the back room. Back to when I was Eleanor Briggs, head cashier at North River Dynamics and wife of Daniel Briggs. We were not rich. Daniel drove long-haul trucks, and I balanced the books, but our life had a rhythm to it. We had a small cabin near the lake that Daniel loved more than anything. It was simple. It was ours. Then the highway took Daniel. Michael was 15 years old when the police knocked on our door. I remember looking at my son's face at the funeral, pale and terrified, and feeling a crushing weight settle on my shoulders. I felt I had failed him simply by remaining alive while his father was gone. I told myself I had to be both parents now. I had to fill the void of a man who filled every room he entered. That was when the dynamic shifted. Michael was a smart boy, but he learned quickly that my guilt was a currency he could spend. I remember one night in the kitchen, a year after the funeral. He had been caught skipping school. Instead of apologizing, he looked at me with wide, wet eyes. "Mom, you are all I have left," he had said, his voice cracking perfectly. "If I didn't have you, I don't know what I'd do." I just get so sad sometimes. I folded instantly. I wrote the excuse note. I cooked him his favorite steak. I taught him that his sadness was a get-out-of-jail-free card. To get him into a better school district, I sold Daniel's cabin. It was the only place I ever felt truly at peace. But Michael said the commute from the lake was killing his social life. So we moved to Maple Street. I hate this house. I hate the sound of traffic that never dies down, even at 2 a.m. But Michael wanted it, so we bought it. When college arrived, the tuition bills were staggering. Michael did not work a summer job. He said he needed to focus on his studies and network. So I took out loans. I put my name on every promissory note so he could graduate without a cent of debt. I don't want you starting your life in the red, I told him. You're the best. Mum, he said, I'll take care of you when I make it big. You won't have to worry about a thing. Then came Sophie. They married young. I paid for the venue, the flowers, and the catering. I drained my rainy day fund to ensure they had the perfect start. At the reception, Michael stood up to give a speech. I sat at the front table, smoothing my dress, waiting for a nod, a smile, a public acknowledgement of the mother who had given everything. I want to thank everyone for coming, Michael said into the microphone, beaming at the crowd. And a huge thank you to our families for being here. It means the world. He never said my name. He never looked at me. He looked at Sophie, and then he looked at the bar. He is just shy. I whispered to myself then. He doesn't like to be emotional in public, but he was not shy with Patricia. After the wedding, they moved into the Maple Street house. It was supposed to be for 6 months. That was 8 years ago. I later learned what Michael told Sophie to keep them here. He did not say we were saving money. My mum, she is really weak, he told her. She needs someone around. I can't just leave her alone in that big house. It wouldn't be right. He painted me as a frail invalid to justify living rent-free. He turned my generosity into his charity, and while he played the dutiful son for Sophie, he played the perfect son-in-law for Patricia. Patricia, who lived in a gated community 40 minutes away, was Mom. She got the tickets to the theatre. She got the expensive dinners. I got a box of chocolates picked up from the discount rack at the pharmacy on his way home from work. Sorry, Mom, he would say, handing me the box with the orange clearance sticker still half peeled off. Things are just crazy right now. You know how it is. I always smiled. I always said it was fine. I even gave him money for his business ideas, vague ventures that never materialized, but always required just a few $1,000s more to get off the ground. I will pay you back double. Mom, he would promise, his hand already closing around the check. This is the one. Just trust me. I always trusted him. I kept paying, and he kept taking. I had raised a son who believed that my resources were his birthright, and my needs were an inconvenience. Sitting in that car, watching him toast another woman, I finally admitted the truth I had been hiding from myself since he was 15. I did not raise a son. I raised a parasite, and I had been feeding him my own blood for 40 years. The house on Maple Street still bears my name on the deed. But inside these walls, I have become a ghost in my own life. When Michael and Sophie moved in, they said it was for 6 months. That was nearly 10 years ago. Slowly, imperceptibly. The geography of my home shifted until I was no longer the owner, but a lodger they tolerated with heavy sighs. They occupy the master suite, The one with the large bay windows and the attached bath that Daniel and I remodeled the year before he died. They said they needed the space for their things. I reside in the small guest room at the back of the house. My view is not of the street or the garden, but of the neighbour's red brick wall, a mere 5 feet away. When I wake up in the morning, the room is grey, regardless of the weather. The kitchen, too, has been erased. My old oak cabinets are gone, replaced by sleek, cold white laminate that Sophie chose. It opens up the space. "Mom," she had said, while tossing my ceramic spice jars into a donation box. The administration of my life has followed the same pattern. Years ago, Michael suggested he take over the utility bills and the property tax payments. "It is too much paperwork for you," he insisted. "Let me link it to my account. It is just cleaner that way." I agreed because I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to be the easy mother. Now, I simply sign checks when he slides them across the counter, often without seeing the final figures. I have lost the code to the garage door. I do not know the password to the Wi-Fi. I am a passenger in a vehicle I purchased. Our evenings are a study in isolation. We sit in the living room, the television blaring a reality show Sophie likes. They sit on the large leather sofa, faces illuminated by the blue light of their iPads. I sit in the armchair in the corner. "How was work today?" Michael, I ask during a commercial break. He does not look up. "Fine." "Did you hear about the storm coming this weekend?" He scrolls past something on his screen. "Yeah." "Mom, I'm trying to read this email. Can we just have a little quiet?" I retreat into silence. Later. When they think I am asleep, or perhaps simply because they do not care if I hear. Michael vents to Sophie in the kitchen. "I feel suffocated," he says, his voice not quite a whisper. I come home and she is just there, sitting there. I can't relax in my own house. His house. When Sophie invites her friends over for wine nights, I am presented as a charity case. I have heard Michael introduce me to strangers in the foyer. "This is my mom, Eleanor," he says with a tight smile. "She is staying with us for now." Staying with us. As if I am the transient. As if I am the guest. Sophie plays her part differently. She offers kindness in calculated doses. She will bring a slice of pie to my room, smiling sweetly. "Here you go, Mom," she says. But 10 minutes later, I hear her downstairs, her voice pitched high with exhaustion. "I am so tired. Mike, I spent the whole day running around for your mom. It's like having another child sometimes." She turns a 2-minute gesture into a day of labor. The contrast with Patricia is sharp enough to draw blood. When Michael speaks to his mother-in-law on the phone, his voice drops an octave. It becomes warm, solicitous. He opens car doors for her. He buys her premium tickets to musicals in the city. Mom Patricia loves the theatre. He says fondly, "She deserves a treat." I apparently deserve nothing. The final fracture in my denial happened 3 weeks ago. I was sorting through the mail, something I rarely do anymore, because Michael usually intercepts it, and I found a statement for a credit card I thought was for emergencies only. I opened it. The balance was staggering. There were charges for electronics, for a weekend getaway to a resort in Wisconsin, and multiple dinners at high-end steakhouses. And there, listed as an authorized user, was Michael Briggs. He had added himself to my card. I remember staring at the paper, thinking of the conversation we had just the night before. I had asked if we could turn up the heat because the back room was drafty. "Mum, come on." Michael had groaned, rubbing his temples. Do you know what gas costs right now? We are barely scraping by. We have to tighten our belts, put on a sweater. He was eating a $60 steak on my credit, while I shivered in the back room to save him $3 on heat. I am not a person to him. I am a resource to be mined until the vein runs dry. But sitting in the dark of the restaurant parking lot, watching him laugh, I realized the mine has finally collapsed. I remained in the driver's seat, my hands resting loosely on the steering wheel, watching the pantomime of a perfect family dinner unfold behind the glass. The insulation of my car was thick, but I could almost hear the frequency of their laughter. It pierced through the windshield, sharper than the cold wind rattling the bare branches of the oak trees lining the parking lot. For a brief, feverish moment, I considered opening the car door. I imagined marching into the restaurant, my coat unbuttoned, my hair wind-blown, and standing at the edge of table 4. I imagined the silence that would fall over them. But then I played the scene out to its logical conclusion. Michael would not be ashamed. He would be annoyed. He would look at me with that tight, patronizing grimace he reserves for when I forget where I put my reading glasses. "Mom, what are you doing here?" he would say, his voice dripping with forced patience for the benefit of the onlookers. "You are making a scene. You are hysterical." Sophie would look down at her plate, embarrassed by the crazy mother-in-law. The waiters would exchange pitying glances. I would be the villain, the unstable old woman ruining a nice family moment. The humiliation of that imagined scenario was colder than the air outside. I realized that anger without a plan is just a tantrum, and I was too old for tantrums. Instead, I reached into my purse and withdrew my phone. I did not turn on the flash. I steadied my hands against the steering wheel and zoomed in. Click. Michael handing the velvet box to Patricia. Click. Michael leaning over to kiss Patricia on the cheek, his hand resting affectionately on her shoulder, a gesture he had not offered me in 5 years. Click. The waiter bringing out a cake with a sparkler. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred, but the icing script was legible enough. "Happy birthday. Mom P." I lowered the phone. I did not intend to post these on social media. I was not looking for public sympathy. I needed them for me. I needed them for the days when Michael would inevitably twist reality, when he would tell me I was imagining things, when he would say I was being sensitive. This was my evidence. This was the anchor to keep me from drifting back into his gaslighting. My mind cycled back to my previous birthdays. Last year, Michael had cancelled 20 minutes before dinner, claiming a pipe had burst in the basement of the hospital. I ate a sandwich over the sink. The year before that, we stayed in because Sophie was too tired to dress up, and we heated frozen pizzas while they watched a movie I did not understand. I had excused it all. I had told myself it was the price of having a busy, successful son, but looking at table 4, I realized it was not the price. It was the tax I paid for being the one who loved more. A sudden warmth touched my left shoulder. It was a sensation I had not felt in 15 years, but I knew it instantly. It felt like Daniel. I closed my eyes and saw my husband, his hands grease-stained from the truck, looking at me with those serious, dark eyes. "Ellie," he used to say, "don't you ever let anyone, not even our own blood, treat you like a wallet with a pulse." I had failed him. For a decade. Out of a terrifying fear of loneliness. I had traded my self-respect for the scraps of their affection. I had let them hollow me out because I thought if I gave them everything, they would have to love me back. But the love was sitting at table 4, bought and paid for, and I was not invited. I took a deep breath. The air in the car was stale. I expected to cry. I waited for the sob to claw its way up my throat, but it never came. Crying would imply that I was heartbroken. I was not heartbroken. I was severed. The cord was cut. No tears. I said aloud to the dashboard, "If I cry, he wins. If I cry, I am just the emotional mother he complains about." I put the car in reverse. I backed out of the space slowly, leaving the glow of harbour and oak behind me. I did not drive straight to the house on Maple Street. I turned into a 24-hour gas station a mile down the road. The fluorescent lights inside were humming, buzzing like an angry insect. I walked down the aisle of overpriced goods and found the small stationery section. I picked out a black composition notebook with a stiff cardboard cover. I picked out a pack of 2 blue ballpoint pens. I paid with cash. "Receipt?" the attendant asked, popping his gum. "No, thank you," I said. I drove home. The house was dark and silent. They would not be back for hours. I walked into the kitchen, leaving the lights off, illuminated only by the street lamp filtering through the window above the sink. I took the small white box out of the refrigerator. I opened it and ate a forkful of my own birthday cake. It tasted like wax and sugar. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the notebook. I clicked the pen. The sound was loud in the empty room. I pressed the tip to the first line of the paper and wrote, my handwriting sharp and deliberate. March 15th, 62nd birthday. My son is celebrating with his mother-in-law while lying to me about his work. This is the day I begin to take back my life. I closed the book. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me. I was no longer waiting for them to come home. I was waiting for morning. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning. The house was silent. Michael and Sophie had not returned last night, likely crashing in the guest suite at the Hales estate because Michael often claimed it was unsafe to drive after a celebration. For the first time, I was grateful for their absence. I brewed a pot of strong black coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my new black notebook. I did not make breakfast. I made a list. 1 First National Bank, 2 Doyle and Associates Law, 3 North River HR Department. It was a kill list for my son's privileges. I arrived at the bank exactly when the doors unlocked at 9 o'clock. I sat across from a junior personal banker named David, a polite young man who had helped Michael set up the joint access years ago. "Good morning, Mrs. Briggs," David said, smiling. "Is Michael coming in today?" "No," I said, placing my ID and debit card on the desk. "I need to make some changes, David. I want to remove Michael from all my accounts, checking, savings, everything. I want his secondary card cancelled immediately, and I need new online banking passwords that are not sent to his email." David blinked, his smile faltering. "Oh, well, we can certainly do that. But, are you sure? The joint status allows him to help you manage. I am perfectly capable of managing my own money," I interrupted, my voice level but firm. "Please proceed." He began typing. The clicking of the keyboard was the only sound for a long minute. Then he frowned. "Okay, the accounts are separated. However, Mrs. Briggs. I cannot remove his name from the personal loan because that is a fixed-term debt obligation." I froze. "What loan?" David turned the screen slightly toward me. "The unsecured personal loan taken out last November. $15,000. It was done via electronic signature through the app." I stared at the screen. I traced the transaction history. The money had been deposited into my account and then transferred out exactly 4 minutes later to an account ending in 409. That was Michael's private checking account. He had used my credit score and my digital identity to borrow $15,000, taken the cash, and left me with the monthly payments, which he had likely set to autopay, so I would never notice the slow bleed. I see, I said. The rage I expected did not come. Instead, it was a cold, clinical clarity. David, please print the full statements for the last 2 years. Every deposit, every withdrawal, every transfer. Put it in a folder. I walked out of the bank with a thick envelope. It was not just paper. It was ammunition. By noon, I was sitting in the office of Karen Doyle. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s, with short grey hair and a reputation for being a shark in divorce court. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses as I explained what I needed. I am not suing him, I told her. I just want to ensure he can never sign my name again. We spent an hour redrafting my estate documents. I revoked the power of attorney I had signed 10 years ago. The one Michael said was just in case of emergency. I created a new medical directive. And then came the house. You want to put the property on Maple Street into a revocable living trust, Karen summarized, pen hovering over her legal pad. And the primary beneficiary upon your death is... Not your son, no, I said. The beneficiary will be the Redwood Springs High School Scholarship Fund. Karen paused. She took off her glasses and looked at me with genuine concern. Eleanor, this is a significant decision. This effectively disinherits him from his childhood home. Are you absolutely certain about this? I looked at the framed degrees on her wall. I thought of the $15,000. I thought of the toast at Harbour and Oak. My son has spent his life thinking love is a transaction where he takes, and I give, I said quietly. He needs a lesson that emotional karma won't teach, so financial law will have to do it. Karen nodded slowly. I will have the papers ready for signing by Friday. My final call was from the parking lot of the law firm. I dialed the Human Resources Department at North River Dynamics. This is Eleanor Briggs. Employee ID 452. I said when the rep answered. I am calling to update my privacy settings. Under no circumstances is any information regarding my pension, my life insurance, or my retirement timeline to be released to anyone claiming to be my family representative. If my son calls, you are to tell him nothing. We can flag that on your file immediately. Eleanor, the rep confirmed. I drove home as the sun began to dip lower in the sky. My purse was heavy with legal drafts and bank statements, physically weighing down my shoulder. Yet, as I walked up the driveway to the house that was now legally protected from my son's greed, I felt weightless. For the first time in a decade, I was not carrying Michael. I had set him down. The explosion happened on a Thursday evening. The front door slammed with enough force to rattle the picture frames in the hallway. Michael stormed into the living room. His face flushed a deep, ugly red. He was holding his phone like a weapon. "Mum!" he shouted, not bothering to check if Sophie was in the room. "What did you do with the bank account I tried to pay for gas, and the card was declined?" It said the card was cancelled. I was sitting in my armchair, reading a magazine I had actually bought for myself earlier that day. I lowered it slowly and looked him in the eye. "I went to the bank," I said, my voice steady. "I removed you as an authorized user. The card was cancelled because it is not your account. It is mine." Michael threw his hands up, pacing the small rug. "Are you crazy? I manage our finances. You know you get confused with the online stuff." I am doing this to help you, and you cut me off. You are not managing my finances. Michael, I said, you are draining them. That is insane. He spat. Everything we have is because I know how to handle money. You think your little pension covers this lifestyle? My pension is exactly what pays for the roof over your head. I replied, standing up. Everything I have is because of 40 years of my labor and the insurance money your father left me. It is not because of your management. Sophie walked in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She looked between us, her expression tight. Eleanor, please, she said, her tone patronizing. Michael is just stressed. He takes care of all the bills. You know he does. Maybe you forgot that you asked him to handle it last year. I looked at my daughter-in-law. For a moment, I saw her not as an enemy, but as a blind follower. I walked over to the side table where I had placed the thick manila envelope from the bank. I pulled out a single sheet, the transfer receipt for the personal loan. Ask your husband about the $15,000 he borrowed in my name last November, I said, holding the paper out to her. Ask him why the money went into his private account 4 minutes later. Sophie froze. She looked at Michael. He opened his mouth, but for the first time in his life, he could not find the words. That was for an investment, he stammered. I was going to surprise you with the returns. I did not argue. I simply went back to my room and closed the door. 2 days later, on a Saturday afternoon, a silver Mercedes pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as Patricia Hale stepped out. She was carrying a white bakery box. I opened the door before she could knock. She looked flustered, her usual poise slightly cracked. Eleanor, she said, I am so sorry to intrude, but, well, I felt terrible. I stepped back to let her in. Why? Patricia. She set the box on the entry table. Michael told me you hate crowds. He said that is why you didn't want to come to Harbour and Oak the other night. But then I realized I didn't even send a card. I didn't know it was your birthday until I saw the date on the calendar later. I felt a cold shiver pass through me. He told you I didn't want to come. Yes, Patricia said. She lowered her voice, looking around the living room. He said your condition makes loud noises difficult for you, the anxiety pills and all. I stared at her. Patricia, come into the kitchen. We sat at the small table. I did not offer coffee. I needed clarity. What condition, I asked. What pills? Patricia looked uncomfortable. She fiddled with the clasp of her purse. Well, you know, he says you have been struggling since Daniel passed, that you take medication that makes you forgetful. That is why he has to handle all the legal decisions. He told me he pays the mortgage here because your pension isn't enough to cover the care you need. The brilliance of his lie took my breath away. To me, he was the struggling son who needed my help. To his wife's wealthy family, he was the saintly provider supporting a senile, drug-addicted mother. He played both sides to keep the money flowing from me and the sympathy flowing from them. I stood up and walked to the counter where I kept my war folder. I pulled out the deed to the house on Maple Street. I pulled out the most recent tax assessment. I pulled out my medical records from my last physical, which showed a clean bill of health and 0 prescriptions for anxiety. Read this, I said. Patricia put on her reading glasses. She read the deed. She saw that the house was fully paid off, solely in my name. She read the bank statements showing the transfers to Michael. I do not take pills. Patricia, I said softly. And he does not pay the mortgage. There is no mortgage. He lives here for free. Patricia's face went pale. Her hand went to her mouth. She was a smart woman, a woman who ran her own business before she retired. She connected the dots instantly. He told me he bought this place 5 years ago, she whispered. He told me he needed a loan from me last year to fix the roof because you couldn't afford it. The roof has not been touched in 10 years, I said. We sat in silence. The kitchen clock ticked loudly. The dynamic between us shifted. We were no longer the favoured mother and the forgotten mother. We were two women who had been played by the same con artist. Patricia stood up. She looked angry, but the anger was not directed at me. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. I gave him $10,000 for that roof, she said, her voice trembling with a suppressed rage. I thought I was helping a good son take care of his mother. She walked to the door, then turned back. I am not going to say anything to Sophie yet, Patricia said. She needs to see it for herself, or she won't believe it. But Eleanor, if you need a witness, or if you need someone to stand next to you when this all comes out, you call me. I do not want my daughter married to a liar, and I certainly do not want to be one of his victims. She left the cake on the table. It was a peace offering, and also the first brick in a wall we were going to build around Michael, one truth at a time. The change in the atmosphere at the house on Maple Street was immediate. When the credit card declined for the second time and the bank error excuse stopped working, Michael switched tactics. He brought home flowers on a Tuesday. They were carnations, dyed an unnatural shade of blue, likely purchased from the gas station on the corner for $10. Hey, Mum, he said, placing them on the counter with a heavy sigh. He loosened his tie, performing the exhausted act he had perfected over the years. I saw these and thought of you. Work has been a nightmare. I feel like I'm drowning. It would be really nice if we could just, help each other out right now. In the past, I would have made him tea. I would have written a check. I would have offered to pay the utility bill he had forgotten. This time, I continued wiping the counter. That sounds difficult. Michael, put the flowers in a vase if you want. He blinked, stunned by the lack of sympathy. That's it. I tell you I'm suffering and you're just cold. What is going on with you? I am listening. Michael, I said calmly. I am just not solving. He stormed out of the kitchen. Later that evening, I heard him talking to Sophie in the living room. He did not bother to lower his voice much. I am telling you, Soph, she is getting worse, he said. She's paranoid. She's hoarding money. It's the early stages. I looked it up. We might need to look into, legal guardianship, just to make sure she doesn't hurt herself financially. He was planting the seeds of insanity to cover the tracks of his own greed. He wanted to declare me incompetent so he could legally seize what I had just locked away. But Michael forgot that I had a life outside of this house. The next day, at North River Dynamics, I scheduled a private meeting with Sarah, the head of human resources. I sat in her office, smoothing my skirt, looking every bit the lucid, 30-year employee I was. Sarah, I need to report a security concern. I said, my son, Michael Briggs, has been seen in the lobby asking about my retirement benefits. I want to make it formally clear that he has no authorization to discuss my employment. Sarah frowned and tapped her keyboard. It is funny you mention that. Eleanor, we actually received an email from your personal address 2 days ago. It requested that your direct deposit routing number be changed to a new account starting next month. My blood ran cold, but my face remained impassive. May I see it? She turned the monitor. The email was sent from my account, but the subject line read, Urgent request for pension transfer. Pension was spelled with a T. I am an accounts receivable clerk. I have not misspelled a financial term in 40 years. Sarah, I said, pointing at the screen. I did not write this, and that is not my new account number. That is my son's account. Sarah's eyes widened. Oh my God. Eleanor, this is attempted fraud. I would like to open an internal investigation, I said, my voice steady. And I want a 2-step verification on my file. No changes unless you speak to me on the phone and I give you a verbal code. Consider it done, Sarah said, looking at me with a mix of pity and respect. We will flag the account. If that email address tries to contact us again, it goes straight to our legal department. Michael had no idea. He thought he was playing a game of chess with a senile old woman, but he had just made a move that placed him on a corporate fraud watch list. When I got home that evening, the tension was palpable. Michael was waiting in the kitchen. He had abandoned the nice guy act. Sophie and I have been talking, he said, leaning against the fridge, crossing his arms. We think you need to see a specialist, a neurologist. You are forgetting things. Mom, you are making irrational decisions with the bank. If you don't agree to go voluntarily, I might have to, well, take steps to ensure you are safe. It was a threat. He was threatening to lock me away to get his hands on the house. I poured myself a glass of water. I took a sip. I set the glass down. You can try, I said. I'm serious, he snapped, his voice rising. People will think you are losing your mind. You cut off your own son. You sit in the dark. You are building a case against yourself. Mum, if I go to a judge, they will give me power of attorney in a heartbeat. I turned to him. I looked at the man who used to be the boy I carried on my hip. Whether I am lucid or not. I paused, realizing my anger had almost dragged me back into my grandmother's language. Whether I am lucid or not. Michael. That is for lawyers and doctors to conclude. Not you? And my lawyers have already seen me. My doctors have already cleared me. You are the only one here who is desperate. For the first time. I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He realized I was not confused. I was prepared. That night, I opened my black notebook. My hand did not shake. March 22nd. He threatened me with a mental institution today. He does not understand that by trying to prove I am incompetent now, he is too late. The trust is signed. The affidavit is notarized. Every time he calls me crazy, he just proves he is losing control. Patricia called me at 2:00 in the afternoon to tell me the meeting was over. She had met Sophie at a small bakery on the edge of town, far enough away that no one from Michael's social circle would spot them. She did not tell me every word that was said, but she told me enough. She had laid the documents on the table, the deed to the house on Maple Street, proving it was mine. The bank statements showing the unauthorized transfers, and the loan documents with Michael's digital fingerprint. She tried to defend him at first. Eleanor, Patricia told me over the phone, her voice sounding tired. She said you get confused. She said Michael manages things because he has to. But I made her look at the dates. I made her look at the amounts. Mathematics does not care about sentiment. when Sophie came home that evening. The air in the house changed. Usually, she bustles in with noise, calling out to Michael, complaining about traffic. Tonight, she was silent. She walked past me in the kitchen without a word, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed but dry. She looked like someone who had been walking on a frozen lake and just heard the ice crack beneath her feet. She waited until Michael was in the shower. I saw her sitting at the dining table, staring at the wall, her hands clenched in her lap. She was replaying years of memories. Every time Michael had rolled his eyes at me, every time he had told her, "Mom is having a bad day, just ignore her." Every time he had claimed I refused to take my medication. She was realizing that the villain in their marriage was not the difficult mother living in the back room. When Michael came downstairs, toweling off his hair, smiling that easy, boyish smile, Sophie was holding his phone. "Hey, babe," Michael said, reaching for a grape from the fruit bowl. "Did you see the hay? Why do you have my phone?" "What is the password to your personal email?" Sophie asked. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. Michael froze. "What? Why, you know I use that for work stuff. It's confidential." "I know the passcode is your birthday," she said. "I already looked. I searched for the loan confirmation, the one for $15,000 that was taken out in your mother's name last November." Michael's face drained of colour. He looked at me, standing by the sink, and then back at his wife, Sophie. "Baby, listen." He started, holding his hands up. "You don't understand. Mom." She agreed to that. "She just forgot. You know how her memory is lately. She probably told you she didn't know about it. But stop it." Sophie screamed. The sound was raw, tearing through the quiet house. "Stop lying. The confirmation email was sent to your address. Michael, there is a copy in your sent folder where you forwarded it to the bank. If she agreed to it, why did you have to hide the paper trail I did it for us?" Michael shouted back, dropping the nice guy mask. "Do you have any idea how much it costs to keep you happy? The trips, the dinners. You think my salary covers that I was trying to give us a good life?" "By stealing from your mother," Sophie retorted, her voice shaking. "By making me believe she was senile so I wouldn't question why you controlled her money." Michael paced the room, running his hands through his damp hair. "She is difficult. She is a burden. Look at her, standing there. She doesn't even pay rent. I did not scream. I did not cry. I simply walked to the counter where my folder lay. I picked up the stack of stapled papers, the undeniable chronology of my financial evisceration, and slid it across the polished granite island towards Sophie. "If you really want to know who has been paying for your life," I said softly, "read it all. Read every line. Then decide who you want to believe." I walked past Michael. He looked at me with a mixture of hatred and panic, like a trapped animal realizing the cage door was locked. "Mom," he hissed, "don't do this. I am not doing anything." "Michael," I replied without stopping, "I am just letting the truth do the work." I went to my room and closed the door. The arguing continued for another hour, muffled but intense. Then, silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Around 10 o'clock. I heard the linen closet open. Then I heard the sound of blankets being arranged on the living room sofa. For the first time in their marriage, Sophie was not sleeping in the master bedroom. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was Patricia. "I am sorry. Eleanor," she said. "I am so sorry I believed him. I feel like I feel like I helped him hurt you. You didn't know, I said, lying in the dark. What happens now? Patricia asked. Sophie is devastated. Are you going to kick them out immediately? I do not want to destroy their marriage. Patricia, I said, looking at the ceiling. But I will not save it, either. If Sophie decides to leave, I will not stop her. And I will not protect Michael from the fallout. He is a grown man. It is time he pays his own bill. 1 week later, Michael proposed the solution. He called it a do-over dinner. He insisted that we celebrate my birthday properly, not at a restaurant, but right here in the kitchen on Maple Street. He claimed it would be intimate and healing. I agreed on one condition: Patricia and Sophie had to be present at the table. Michael thought this was his victory lap. He believed he had smoothed things over with Sophie, and that Patricia was just there to witness his charm. He did not know that the three of us had been talking every day while he was at work. The atmosphere in the dining room was brittle. Michael had roasted a chicken and bought 2 bottles of wine that I knew cost $8 apiece. He had lit candles, the flickering light casting long, dancing shadows against the white laminate cabinets he had forced me to install. We sat. The sound of silverware scraping against china was deafening. "This is nice, isn't it?" Michael said, beaming. He poured wine into Patricia's glass with a flourish. I really wanted us all together. Family is the most important thing. Right, Mum. Patricia. Patricia smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. It is certainly revealing. Michael. Michael missed the edge in her voice. He turned to me. And you? Ma, I know things have been tense, but I want you to know I'm handling everything. You just relax. Sophie was staring at her plate. She was pushing a piece of potato around with her fork, her knuckles white. She had not spoken a word since we sat down. Michael stood up and tapped his glass with a spoon. I would like to propose a toast, he announced. To new beginnings, and to my mother, who, even when she gets a little confused, we still love her. The air left the room. Sophie set her fork down. The clatter was sharp. She looked up at her husband, and the expression on her face was one of absolute exhaustion. Put the glass down. Michael, Sophie said quietly. What? Michael laughed nervously. Come on, Soph, I'm trying to make a nice moment. I asked you a question this morning, Sophie said, her voice trembling slightly. I asked what your plan was for tonight. You told me you were going to make everything right. But what did you tell your mother you were going to do? Did you tell her this was a party? Or did you tell her this was a meeting to sign the new power of attorney papers you printed out at the library yesterday? Michael froze. His mouth hung open slightly. He looked from Sophie to me, his eyes darting with panic. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered. I just want Mom to be safe. If she signs the papers, I can protect the assets. I reached under the table and pulled out a thick, manila envelope. I placed it next to my water glass. Michael's eyes locked onto it. He exhaled, a look of relief washing over his face. He thought I had brought the papers he wanted. He thought I had surrendered. Is that it? He asked, his voice softening. Did you bring the forms? Ma, that's good. We can just sign them after dessert, and these are not your forms. Michael, I interrupted. I put on my reading glasses. I opened the envelope and pulled out the document Karen Doyle had finalized that morning. The paper was heavy, official. This is the new deed of trust for the property at 420 Maple Street. I read aloud, my voice steady and clear. Effective immediately. This property is placed into the Briggs Living Trust. Upon my death, or in the event of my incapacitation, the sole beneficiary of this asset shall be the Redwood Springs High School Scholarship Fund. I looked up. There is no mention of a Michael Briggs in this document. You are not on the title. You are not a beneficiary. You are a tenant. Michael stared at me. He looked like I had just spoken in a foreign language. A scholarship. You are giving my house to a scholarship. It is not your house, Patricia said from across the table. Her voice was sharp. And before you try to claim she is mentally incompetent to sign this, you should know that I was the witness. I watched her sign it in front of a notary and 2 lawyers. She is sound of mind. Michael. She is just done being used. Michael turned to Sophie, desperate for an ally. Sophie, you can't let them do this. This is our inheritance. This is our future. Sophie stood up. She did not look at him with anger anymore. She looked at him with disgust. What were you going to tell me if she signed your papers? Michael Sophie asked. Were you going to tell me it was for her own good? Or were you going to use my name to take out another loan against the equity? If you can steal from the woman who gave birth to you, what will you do to me when things get hard? I did this for us, Michael screamed, slamming his hand on the table. The wine glass tipped over, spilling a red stain across the white tablecloth. You don't understand. I grew up with nothing. I remember the powdered milk. I remember the second-hand clothes. I was terrified of being poor again. Everything I did it so we wouldn't end up like her. He pointed a shaking finger at me. The room went silent. The flame on the candle flickered in the draught. I looked at my son. I saw the fear in him. Yes. But I also saw the entitlement that had grown over it like a fungus. You are not afraid of poverty. Michael, I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of every dollar I had sacrificed for him. You are afraid of work. You are afraid of responsibility. You have spent your entire adult life using me as a cushion, so you never had to feel the ground. You think you are protecting yourself from falling, but you are just dragging me down with you. I stood up and picked up the envelope. Tonight, I said, looking him in the eye, I am moving out of the way. I am returning all your falls to you. You are on your own. I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out a shiny new set of silver keys. I placed them on the table next to the legal envelope. The sound of the metal hitting the wood was final, like a judge's gavel. The locks were changed an hour ago while you were at work, I said, my voice devoid of the trembling that used to define me. Here is the spare key. You have exactly 30 days to vacate the premises. Michael. The eviction notice is inside the envelope, filed by Karen's office this afternoon. Michael stared at the keys. His face crumbled, shifting from anger to a look of utter betrayal. You are kicking me out, he stammered, his eyes filling with tears that for once might have been real. I am your son. How can you betray me like this? No, Michael, I replied, standing tall. I am simply stopping you from betraying me any further. For 10 years, I let you treat me like an intruder in my own home. Tonight, I am taking the home back. Sophie stood up. She did not reach for Michael's hand. She reached for her purse. I am going to stay with my mother for a while, she said. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I need to think. I need to figure out how much of our marriage was real and how much was just a financial strategy. Sophie. Wait, Michael pleaded, reaching out to grab her arm. "Don't listen to them. We can fix this." Sophie pulled her arm away. She walked to the door, then paused. "I will check the bank accounts tomorrow, Michael. If I find one more lie, I am filing for divorce." Patricia stood up and buttoned her coat. She looked at her son-in-law, not with hatred, but with a profound disappointment. You cannot use a hard childhood as a permanent excuse to destroy people. "Michael," she said firmly, "if you want to save your marriage, you start by paying your own debts and apologizing. You do not save it by finding a new victim to exploit." They left. The front door clicked shut. Michael was left standing alone in the kitchen of the house on Maple Street. For the first time, he was the master of the house, and the house was empty. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy with the weight of consequences he had spent a lifetime avoiding. 3 weeks later, I moved. I did not move far, just a few miles away to a complex specifically for independent seniors. My new apartment is not large. It has 1 bedroom, a small kitchenette, and a balcony that overlooks the town park. But it is mine. It is bright, painted a soft yellow, and when I unlock the door, I know exactly who is inside. On moving day, Karen Doyle and Nora came to help me unpack. We did not have a fancy dinner. We sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by cardboard boxes, eating pepperoni pizza from a box and drinking iced tea. This place has good energy. "Eleanor," Nora said, biting into a slice, "it feels like you." I looked around. I did not see a lonely old woman's apartment. I saw a fortress of peace. "Yes." I smiled. "It does." Michael called me several times in those first few months. Sometimes he was angry, shouting about how unfair the trust was. Sometimes he was weeping, saying he missed me. Sometimes he tried to bargain. "If I promise to pay you back." "Will you dissolve the trust?" he asked one Tuesday. "I can change." "Mom, I promise." "If you want to change, Michael, do it for yourself." I told him, gripping the phone tightly but not yielding. "Do not do it because you think it will get you the house back. The house is gone. You have to build your own foundation now." I stopped answering the calls after that. I let him leave voicemails. I needed to heal, and you cannot heal while holding on to the knife that cut you. A full year has passed since that dinner. Yesterday was my 63rd birthday. I did not sit in a dark car in a parking lot. I hosted a small party in my apartment. Nora came with her fiancé. 2 of my neighbors, lovely women named Betty and June, brought a casserole. And then there was a knock at the door. It was Patricia. She held a bakery box, a simple vanilla cake with strawberry filling. My favorite. "Happy birthday." "Eleanor?" she said, her eyes warm. We spent the evening laughing. We told stories. We drank tea. No one mentioned Michael. We did not need to. He was no longer the sun we orbited around. As I blew out the candles, I looked at the faces of the women around me. I realized that revenge is not always about destruction. It is not always about making the other person suffer. Sometimes, the most brutal and beautiful revenge is simply taking your own life back and living it so fully that their absence does not even leave a scar. I cut the cake. It was sweet, and for the first time in a long time, I tasted every bite. Thank you so much for listening to Eleanor's story today. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from, so please drop your city or country in the comments below. It is always amazing to see how big our community is getting. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more family dramas like this, please make sure to subscribe to the Grandma's Family Diary channel, hit that like button, and smash the hype button to help this video get discovered by more people. See you in the next one.